Hey, what's up, Lightboltjoe here. Today we are going to discuss the 1914 book, Tick-Tock of Oz. This is written by L. Frank Baum, came out in 1914. This is the 8th book in the 14 Oz books that he wrote. Where's my bookmark? I don't even know where my rankings are. This is the worst book he's written so far. Definitely bottom. There's no effort. I'm disgusted. I'm also disgusted, before I get into the plot points of why I'm disgusted with this book. I did some digging because I know that he lived in Chicago when he wrote like the first Oz book, and he went to Hollywood. This is the early 1900s, and he made a production company. He sold the rights to some of the books to make stage productions. The 1902 musical, The Wizard of Oz, was very successful, so he's tried to make a stage production of The Marvelous Land of Oz and then Ozma of Oz. He made a movie of The Patchwork Girl of Oz, but this was all before sound was a thing, so these were all silent films as well as musical stage productions. So he did have a lot of I have to give a lot of credit to him trying to get the fantasy worlds on pictures, in the moving pictures. That's why we call them movies. They were moving pictures. Because back then it was still brand new. You know, sound wasn't a thing for movies. It was just moving pictures. That was it. So I will say, I knew that he was in Hollywood for a while, and he wrote one of the first books in Chicago, but I was like, where is he from? So I looked up, he grew up in upstate New York. And then, like, as I'm reading stuff, like, he like housed some folk for women's rights activism marches and rallies, within the Midwest, within the Chicago area. And I got to this point in his history that he wrote 2 editorials about why the mass genocide of the native population is important for the survival of the American settler. And I was like, excuse me, what? And I'm reading it, and then, like, 2 of his grandkids had to apologize to, like, one of the native tribes in that local area, and, like, I was like, oh my god, this is horrifying. Horrifying. I find it horrifying that someone who can write all of this love and acceptance about the land of Oz, Ozma literally says at the end of this book, I'm gonna direct quote it, just to explain my disgust. Our land of Oz is a land of love, and here friendship outranks every other quality. That is page 267 in this book, right? How dare he? How dare he? There's an age-old expression of Walt Disney, right? He might have been a racist at one point. He might have been a Republican. The Republican Party in the 1940s and 50s is nowhere near what it has become to the clown circus that it is now. But one of my favorite sayings is, Disney might have been a Republican, but his legacy sure as hell isn't. And you could apply that actually to J.K. Rowling. J.K. Rowling might be an aborist, what's the word I'm thinking of? TERF? That's the acronym. But she's the transphobic vitriol that pops out of her mouth constantly in public has no relation to the world that she created. J.K. Rowling might be transphobic, but her legacy sure as hell isn't, within regards to the wizarding world, right? The Potter universe that we have within film, book, play, amusement parks. So I have to say the same ideology of L. Frank Baum. L. Frank Baum might have been a aborist racist advocating for the mass genocide of one specific race, but his legacy sure as hell isn't. It's the land of Oz has been a staple within all gay culture. Somewhere Over the Rainbow, every drag show, there's someone wearing a Dorothy costume singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. It's how it is. Somewhere Over the Rainbow, whatever the song is. I can't even remember the lyrics. I'm just so annoyed right now reading this history when I was just trying to figure out where the hell he grew up. Unbelievable. So aside from that, I am never reading these books again, despite the fact that the 7th book is one of my favorite books. I'll probably reread the 7th at some point, but I'm not advocating to anyone to read these books ever again. I can't. It might be a great series when it logically makes sense, but looking back at the past reviews of the past 7 books we've talked about, there's been so many flaws in character development and in plot development and in plot points that there's no consistency, and it's driven me crazy. Here I am talking about the 8th book, TikTok of Oz, right? That there's so many inconsistencies that is really pissing me off reading this. And now I'm spoiled because I've read and reviewed so many things within the Reed Riordan universe, within Rick Riordan's, 20-something books that he's done himself, within Justin Sumper's Vampire books, which are absolutely incredibly golden and gorgeous and beautiful. Incredible human beings with incredible works of art. L. Frank Baum was not an incredible human being, and he has inconsistent work of art, and that's annoying. That's frustrating. So we start this book in Oogaboo, which is it's a kingdom of Oz, but it's like in a corner, and that's run by Queen Anne, and she has 17 guys living in this kingdom, and she tells them all that they're now a part of her army, and she's off to go conquer Oz, right? So they're off to conquer Oz, and Glinda sees this, and she's like, "No, we're gonna mess up your path." So she literally transports them to the Rose Kingdom, which is outside of the Deadly Desert, by the shore, basically, of this ocean, and with her magic, mind you, okay? And so they come across this Rose, kingdom. They pluck this Rose Queen, who's called Ozga, who is a distant cousin of Ozma of Oz, and so her people disown her, and they all have to go on an adventure. They then meet the shipwrecked Betsy Bobbin and Hank the mule, who is talking. They then come across Shaggy Man, who's on a quest to find his brother. So all of them are questing. They eventually get thrown down a tube. They go to the other side of the world. They get thrown back into the tube with a dragon named Quox. And so they then attack the Gnome King and his army to get Shaggy's brother back, who's been kidnapped. And then eventually they win. And Rugaboo, which is his new name now, not the Gnome King anymore, he is dethroned. New king rises, everyone makes friends, and Ozma... the last three chapters was Ozma deciding whether she wants to keep the Shaggy Man's brother, Betsy Bobbin, and Hank the Mule in Oz, because they haven't really earned their place, but, they have. The other thing that pissed me off royally is that he never gave Shaggy Man's brother a name. He's just referenced as brother, or Shaggy's brother, or the ugly one. And I'm like, just give him a name. I can't. Things that piss me off within lack of consistency. People can die in Oz. People can't die in Oz. People can die in Oz. People can't die in Oz. People use money in Oz. People don't need money in Oz. They don't use money. Money's not a thing. People need money in Oz. People don't need money in Oz. Pick an effing narrative and stick to it. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. But when there's so many consistencies, and here we are on book 8, I'm annoyed. And I got 6 more books left to read, and I'm really not happy about it. Because I used to love this series as a kid, but now that I'm older and I know how story works, it's frustrating. Especially knowing the audacity of the human that created it. And it's frustrating because he was ahead of his time. He was ahead of his time in the scientific and artistic communities. Politically, no, obviously, if he's advocating the mass genocides of Native Americans, and socially, no, if he's advocating the mass genocide of Native Americans. He literally writes about cell phones in this book. This book came out in 1914. The man is literally writing about cell phones. Shaggy Man puts a telephone device to his ear, which he can transmit the vibrations of his voice wirelessly to the device that Ozma has. That way they can talk to each other, and she can watch him through the magic picture. Literally talking about FaceTiming, and he's literally talking about cell phones. Unheard of within a Fantasyland kind of book from 1914. That was over 100 years ago. So it's really hard to admire where he is in that scientific aspect when socially and politically he's advocating the mass genocide of Native Americans. I cannot stress that enough. I am so conflicted in having respect for him on a scientific standpoint and disgust for him on a political socialistic standpoint. Not socialism. That is not how socialism works. On a social standpoint. There we go. I hated this book so much because of the lack of consistency. Give Shaggy Man his brother a name. I don't get it. You can't have Ozma preach. I gotta read it again. Our land of Oz is a land of love, and here friendship outranks every other quality. You cannot write these words if you don't preach it yourself. You can't. That's called being a hypocrite. And the liar. These books are filled with lies. My whole life is a lie now. It's a lie. I thought this man was great. Obviously, he was not. So unfortunate. So, on to the books 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. I'm so looking forward to these. He said sarcastically as all hell. Yeah. But hey, I'm glad I now know the truth. That's a positive outlook on it. That's all I got. Mucho mahalo.